Professor Plimer, let's talk about the self-inflicted gas crisis facing Australia. Even Chris Bowen is calling for new gas supplies to provide cheap, reliable energy. But we have state Labor governments, including right here in Victoria, declaring a fatwa against gas, even banning gas appliances in new homes.
Well, your state fatwa actually was started by the Nationals, who started a campaign confusing conventional gas with fracking. And the Libs then took that up, Labor then took it up and has excelled. In Victoria, you have an enormous amount of onshore gas in Gippsland area. This gas is low in carbon dioxide, it's low in mercury. The 5 wells that I've been to and seen them flaring these wells, they are within 2 kilometres of a pipeline. Victoria has stacks of gas. If you go to the other basin, the Otway Basin, it also has stacks of gas. And in Victoria, you're allowed to drill a well from onshore Otway Basin to collect offshore gas, but you can't drill it onshore to collect onshore gas. That is madness. It is no wonder Victoria has a gas shortage. New South Wales has a gas shortage because we have massive reserves of gas at Narrabri, and that has taken more than a decade to try to get that up, producing gas for the people. Queensland does have a lot of gas, and Eastern Australia relies on Queensland for gas. It also relies on Queensland for electricity because Queensland still has coal-fired power stations which are providing the electricity when the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine. So it's about time that we woke up to ourselves and realised that we cannot go backwards into poverty, that we have to have the power systems we once had, which were cheap and reliable.
How much gas do you think we have? Is it decades of supply, years? Do we have any idea how much clean, reliable source of energy we're sitting on?
Rita, you'll be pushing up daisies when we run out of gas. We have thousands of years of gas in Australia. We have thousands of years of coal, especially in Victoria, which is the cheapest coal that we can produce in Australia. And we have millions of years of uranium. So why are we ignoring these types of energy systems, which are well established and well known? We don't have to rebuild grids. We don't have to destroy huge areas of farmland with these solar power plants, with wind turbines, and have power lines going across perfectly good farmland. We've already got the infrastructure. Why are we destroying so much farmland? What is wrong with Labor politicians where they want to destroy farmers to stop farmers putting food on the plates of people in the city? What is wrong with them?
Well, probably they've never stepped foot on a farm. They've got no idea about how their food ends up on their plate. This is the problem when you are so divorced from reality. You've just come through the party structure, through the unions, and now you're an MP, you're sitting in cabinet, you're making these decisions. Let's go to the issue of offshore wind projects. 6 offshore wind projects have won feasibility licences from the government, which means in the coming years, Ian, construction is likely to commence on Australia's first ever offshore wind project. Now, tell me, is this our saviour? Is this a good idea?
Well, it doesn't save anything. Offshore wind gets the green light to build these platforms out on the continental shelf. Whereas to build an offshore gas or oil facility, again, requires environmental lawfare going on for decades. These offshore wind facilities change the aviation patterns, they change shipping patterns, they change fishing patterns, and they kill a lot of wildlife. By killing wildlife offshore, you cannot see the bodies. They probably disturb whale migration and probably kill whales. Now, we know that onshore wind turbines kill birds, kill bats, destroy a very large amount of the environment with land clearing. We know that onshore solar is even worse. So offshore basically puts the problem out of sight. And these would not be viable if there weren't massive subsidies. Now, elsewhere in the world, offshore wind is being cancelled for all the right environmental movements. So what is it about the Greens? The Greens are destroying the environment. They are creating poverty. Why do they want to do this?
Well, it's sad when you see just these solar projects when you are flying around the country and these massive solar farms that are popping up, and they absolutely are a blight on the landscape. And if you love the Australian landscape, and who doesn't? Well, except possibly greenies, because they never get out to the country. Why would you want to destroy this beautiful scenery with things like solar farms or wind farms?
Well, a scenic vista used to be regarded as part of the environment. Apparently now it isn't. We have ridges covered in these wind turbines. We have prime agricultural land in valleys covered by solar panels. And what we don't hear from the Greens is the long-term effects of the pollution. For example, solar panels leak out cadmium telluride. They leak out lead. These go into the soils. That's left there. It doesn't leach out. When we get rid of solar panels, we leave a huge environmental disaster behind. And these are areas which later we might want to use for growing food. In the case of wind turbines, they pollute very large areas with extraordinary dangerous chemicals. And instead of trying to dispose of these wind turbine blades, we bury them, or we cut them up and bury them, and there is no industry at all where we can recycle these. So these are the worst possible decisions we could make for electricity in this country. We have plenty of energy, it is cheap energy, and there's nothing wrong with putting plant food into the atmosphere. There's nothing wrong with feeding the plants, whereas these alternatives to energy, wind and solar, actually destroy plant life.
Now, finally, a regular on this program, Alex Epstein, he does a fantastic job highlighting some of the climate catastrophising, he calls it, where these global warming activists, scientists make all sorts of doomsday predictions that, of course, never come to fruition. Remember, one of these was acid rain. It was going to kill all of us, Ian, acid rain. Let me read this extract from the New York Times to remind our viewers about what damage acid rain was going to do. Rainfall with an acidity level of vinegar has been reported in widely separated areas of the Earth in recent years, and the trend towards more acidic rain has been accelerating. This is all from the New York Times back in 1979. Ian, what happened to acid rain? Why isn't it an issue anymore?
Well, it's like all these catastrophist scare stories. They are blatantly wrong, and they're demonstrably wrong, and the science is wrong. Rain is acid. It always has been acid. We can measure it. And as soon as that acid rain hits rocks or hits the soil, it gets converted into slightly alkaline material, which then ends up in the oceans. The acid rain story was a really big story in Europe in the 70s. We were going to lose all the forests of Europe. Now, these forests did not get destroyed. What is destroying them now is putting in wind turbines and solar farms in areas where there's very little wind, and solar areas in high latitudes where you've got very little sun. So these great scare campaigns have all shown to be wrong. We've had 2,000 years of people telling us the world's going to end by some great catastrophe. Now, if just one of these got it right, we wouldn't be here.
Ian Plimer, thank you so much for your time this evening.